In a small town just outside Atlanta, a decorated Special Forces soldier's stop at a local bar would spark a transformation that no one saw coming. What started as a racist confrontation would end up changing not just a notorious biker gang, but an entire community. This is the incredible true story of how one man's patience and strength turned his worst enemies into his strongest allies. Before we kick things off, tell us where you're watching from today. We'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe if this story touches your heart. A new adventure awaits you tomorrow. The late summer sun was setting over the Rusty Nail Bar and Grill when Staff Sergeant Marcus Washington pulled into the gravel parking lot. His uniform was still perfectly pressed from a long day of training recruits, the medals on his chest telling stories of valor from 3 tours in Afghanistan. All he wanted was a quiet drink before heading home to his family. He had no idea he was about to walk into a hornet's nest. Inside, Jake Big Dog Connor sat at his usual spot, surrounded by members of the Iron Thunder Motorcycle Club. For 20 years they'd ruled this bar like their personal kingdom. The Confederate flags on their leather vests and the hate in their eyes told Marcus everything he needed to know. Tommy Chen, the elderly bartender, had seen trouble before. His hands shook slightly as he served Marcus his ginger ale, knowing what was about to unfold. The regulars started quietly slipping out, leaving only the bikers, Marcus, and the mounting tension. Well, Jake's voice carried across the room. Looks like someone took a wrong turn. This ain't your kind of establishment, soldier boy. Marcus kept his eyes forward, remembering his training. The most dangerous moment in any confrontation was the first response. Just here for a quiet drink, he replied evenly. Same as anyone else. Jake moved closer, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. 20 years, he growled. 20 years this has been our bar, our territory. And you think you can just walk in here? Sir? Marcus turned slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. I've spent 15 years defending everyone's right to gather where they please, including yours, including mine. Rattler and Buck spread out, trying to flank Marcus. The air grew thick with tension as other bikers started to gather. Buck pulled out his phone, grinning as he started recording. This gonna be good, he sneered. You know what's interesting about territory? Marcus's voice remained calm. In Kandahar, I once held a position against 27 insurgents, alone, for 3 hours. They thought numbers made them strong too. Jake's face reddened. You threatening us, boy? No, sir. That's not a threat. It's a professional courtesy. I'd rather walk out of here peacefully. We all would. The first punch came fast, but Marcus was faster. 15 years of combat training took over. Jake's fist met empty air as Marcus sidestepped, moving like water. The second punch never landed either. Before anyone could blink, Jake was on the ground, stunned but unhurt. Rattler charged in next, swinging a pool cue. Marcus disarmed him with one smooth motion, the wooden stick clattering to the floor. Buck kept filming, backing away as his friends hit the ground one by one, taken apart by moves they'd never seen before. Last chance, Marcus said calmly. We can end this now, or I can demonstrate the other 38 ways they taught us to handle situations like this in Special Forces. But Jake wasn't done. He pulled a knife, its blade glinting in the bar's dim light. Not so professional now, are we? What happened next would become legend in 3 counties. Marcus moved like a shadow, disarming Jake with a precision that left everyone speechless. The knife slid across the floor as Jake landed hard, the fight gone from his eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance as Officer Elena Rodriguez pulled up with 3 patrol cars. She found Marcus standing calmly, hands visible, while 5 bikers lay scattered around the bar, all breathing but none wanting to get up. Staff Sergeant Marcus Washington, U.S. Army Special Forces, ma'am, he said clearly. I have ID in my left breast pocket. Buck's phone had captured everything. The biker's aggression, Marcus's repeated attempts to de-escalate, and his incredible defensive techniques. By morning, the video would go viral. But this was just the beginning. What no one knew that night was how this incident would transform not just the Rusty Nail, but the entire Iron Thunder Motorcycle Club. In the months that followed, the bar that had once been a symbol of hatred would become a beacon of unity. The bikers who had tried to beat down a black soldier would end up escorting military funerals, protecting veterans of all races, and helping to shut down hate groups across 3 states. But that transformation wouldn't come easy. As Marcus was about to learn, sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with fists, but with patience, understanding, and the courage to offer your enemy a chance at redemption. Tommy Chen watched from behind the bar, his hands steady now as he reached for the phone. In his 40 years serving drinks, he'd seen countless fights, but something told him this one was different. This wasn't just going to be another bar fight story. This was going to be a story of change. As Officer Rodriguez began taking statements, Marcus finally took a sip of his ginger ale. His uniform was still perfectly pressed, not a metal out of place. He'd faced down 5 angry bikers with the same calm he'd shown in combat, proving that sometimes the strongest weapon isn't force, it's restraint. Buck's phone kept recording as the police led Jake away in handcuffs. The biker leader looked back at Marcus, confusion replacing anger in his eyes. He couldn't understand why this soldier, who could have easily hurt them all, had chosen not to. That question would haunt him in his cell that night, and ultimately lead to the most unlikely brotherhood anyone could imagine. Officer Rodriguez stood in the Rusty Nails parking lot, watching the paramedics tend to Jake's bloody nose. The rain had started falling, gentle at first, then picking up intensity as red and blue lights painted the wet pavement. She'd been a cop for 15 years, but something about this scene was different. "Play it again," she said to Buck, who stood nervously beside her patrol car, his phone showing the video he'd recorded. On the screen, Marcus moved with an almost supernatural grace, neutralizing each attacker without causing serious harm. More impressive were his repeated attempts to de-escalate. "Your choice." Marcus's voice came through clearly on the recording. "We can all walk away from this right now." Detective Lisa Morgan arrived on scene, her unmarked car splashing through growing puddles. She took one look at the bikers being treated by paramedics and raised an eyebrow at Rodriguez. "Let me guess, they picked the wrong target?" "You have no idea," Rodriguez replied, nodding toward Marcus, who was giving his statement to another officer. "Special Forces. They're lucky he showed restraint." Inside, Tommy Chen was already reviewing the security footage with another detective. The cameras had captured everything from multiple angles. 20 years they've been terrorizing people in my bar," Tommy said quietly. "First time anyone ever stood up to them like this." Jake sat in the back of a patrol car, holding a bandage to his nose, his ego bruised worse than his face. Through the window he watched Marcus talking calmly with the officers. Something the soldier had said kept repeating in his mind. "I've spent 15 years defending everyone's right to gather where they please, including yours." Rattler was next to him in the patrol car, nursing his own injuries. "Boss, what just happened? I've never seen anyone move like that." Before Jake could answer, Detective Morgan opened the car door. "Well, gentlemen, you've really done it this time. Assault, hate crime, weapons charge, and all of it on video. The FBI's been building a case against your club for months. This might just be the evidence they needed." Jake's face went pale. "The FBI? Did you really think nobody was watching? The extortion, the intimidation, the attacks on minority-owned businesses?" Morgan's voice was cold. "You boys aren't just facing local charges anymore." Outside, Marcus finished giving his statement. His phone was buzzing nonstop. The video was already spreading online. Sarah, his wife, had sent multiple worried texts. His commanding officer, Colonel Richards, had left 3 voicemails. "Sergeant," Officer Rodriguez approached with his military cover, rescued from where it had fallen during the fight. "You could press serious charges here. Given their record and the hate crime elements, they're looking at significant time." Marcus looked at the cover, brushing off some dirt. "Sometimes punishment isn't the answer, ma'am. Sometimes people just need to be shown a better way." Rodriguez studied him carefully. "You really believe they can change?" "I've seen it before. In Afghanistan, I worked with former Taliban fighters who switched sides once they saw a different path. Hatred usually comes from fear and ignorance. Show people a better way. Give them a chance to be better. You'd be surprised. Inside the patrol car, Jake overheard the conversation. His hands were cuffed behind his back, but his mind was racing. In 20 years of running with bike gangs, he'd never met anyone like this soldier. He'd expected revenge, charges, maybe even a beating. Instead, he got compassion? Tommy Chen approached Marcus with a fresh cup of coffee. On the house, Sergeant. And thank you. Not just for handling them, but for how you handled them. Maybe this time something will actually change. Buck was still standing by Officer Rodriguez's car, his phone now in an evidence bag. I want to make a deal, he said suddenly. I'll testify. About everything. All the people we hurt. All the businesses we shook down. I'm done. Detective Morgan's eyebrows shot up. Just like that? What changed? Buck looked over at Marcus, who was now on the phone with his wife, assuring her he was okay. That man could have destroyed us. All of us. But he chose not to. Made me think maybe I've been fighting for the wrong side. The rain was falling harder now. More police cars arrived, along with 2 FBI agents who'd been monitoring the Iron Thunder MC. Local news vans were starting to show up, drawn by the police activity and the viral video. Marcus finally took a moment to check his own phone. The video had already reached hundreds of thousands of views. Comments were pouring in from veterans, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens, all amazed by his composure and restraint. Sir, a young officer approached. The FBI wants to talk to you. Apparently this club has been on their radar for months. Your incident might help build a bigger case. Marcus nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He was watching Jake through the patrol car window. The biker leader's face showed something beyond anger or shame. It showed confusion, like a man whose entire worldview had been shaken. Tommy Chen walked out of his bar, looking at the scene before him. Police cars, news vans, curious onlookers with phones recording everything. You know, he said to Marcus, my father owned this bar before me. Always dreamed of making it a place where everyone felt welcome. Maybe now. His voice trailed off as more FBI agents arrived. They were already talking about using the Iron Thunder case as a way to crack down on other hate groups in the region. But Marcus saw something different. He saw an opportunity not just for punishment, but for redemption. Officer Rodriguez, he called out, before you take them in, can I have a moment with their leader? Rodriguez looked skeptical, but something in Marcus's voice made her nod. She opened the patrol car door, and Jake looked up, expecting anger or gloating. Instead, he found Marcus standing in the rain, offering something entirely unexpected, a chance. You know, Marcus said quietly, there are better ways to use the loyalty and brotherhood you've built. If you're interested in learning about them, well, I know some veterans organizations that could use men with your organizational skills. Jake stared at him, rain dripping from his beard. For the first time in 20 years of running with outlaw bikers, he felt something he hadn't expected. Shame, yes, but also a glimmer of hope. The morning after the incident at the Rusty Nail, Marcus Washington sat in Colonel Richard's office at Fort Hamilton. The viral video played on the colonel's computer screen, reaching its 3rd million views. You handled that situation perfectly, Sergeant, Richard said, pausing the video. Pentagon's already calling. They want to use this as a training example for conflict resolution. Just did what I was trained to do, sir, Marcus replied, his posture perfect even in the office chair. Minimum force, maximum effect. That's not why I called you in. Richards leaned forward. FBI reached out. They want to try something different with these bikers. Instead of just locking them up, they're interested in your suggestion about rehabilitation. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Local news stations had been calling non-stop since dawn. The story was everywhere. Black Special Forces soldier shows incredible restraint while defending himself against racist bikers. But they were missing the bigger picture. The Iron Thunder MC has chapters in 3 states, Colonel. That's a lot of influence. Imagine if they used that influence for something positive. Across town, Jake Connor sat in an interrogation room, his nose still swollen. Detective Morgan placed a thick file on the table between them. 20 years of violence, intimidation, and hate crimes, she said, opening the file. But here's the interesting part. Before all this, you were a Marine, served with honor in Desert Storm. Jake stared at his hands, cuffed on the table. That was a lifetime ago. What happened? Lost my brother in Iraq. Another black soldier made it out of the ambush, but Jimmy didn't. I let that poison me. Started blaming everyone who looked different. Morgan slid another paper across the table. Sergeant Washington asked about you. Your service record, your background. You know what he said? He said you're not lost, just lost your way. Outside the police station, reporters gathered as Buck was escorted in to give his statement. He'd spent the night thinking about everything he'd witnessed, everything he'd filmed. His phone had captured more than just a fight. It had captured a moment of transformation. I want to tell you everything, Buck told Detective Morgan, about the businesses we shook down, the people we hurt. But I also want to tell you about Jake, about who he was before the hate took over. Sarah Washington was preparing her classroom for another day of teaching when her students started arriving. Their phones were out, all showing the same video. Mrs. Washington, one student asked, was that really your husband? The soldier who took down those bikers? Before she could answer, Principal Martinez appeared at her door. Sarah, we'd like your husband to speak at next week's assembly about conflict resolution, about choosing peace over violence. At the Rusty Nail, Tommy Chen was dealing with a different kind of crowd. People were coming from miles around, wanting to see where it happened. But something else was happening too. Veterans of all races were showing up, offering support, sharing stories. My father came here from Vietnam, Tommy told a group of vets at the bar. Faced racism, hatred, but he believed in America, believed people could change. Maybe he was right. Marcus's phone rang again. This time it was Pastor Michael Brooks from the local Baptist church. Brother, we need you to speak to our youth group. These kids, they're dealing with so much anger, so much division. They need to see there's another way. In his cell, Jake stared at the wall, remembering. Before the hatred, before the gang, he'd been a Marine, had brothers of all colors. When had he forgotten that? His lawyer arrived with news. The FBI was offering a deal. Help shut down the hate groups, transform the club into something positive, and they'd recommend leniency. There's more, the lawyer said. Sergeant Washington, he's offered to help. Says he knows some veteran organizations looking for leadership. Officer Rodriguez was reviewing the security footage again when she noticed something. In every attempt to de-escalate, Marcus had addressed the bikers with respect. Even after they attacked, he'd shown restraint, protected himself without causing serious harm. That's real strength, she told her partner. Not just knowing how to fight, but knowing when not to. Earl Chen, Tommy's son, was cleaning up the bar when Marcus stopped by. The morning light streamed through windows that had witnessed decades of hatred. You're early, Earl said, noting Marcus was still in his PT uniform from morning training. Had an idea, Marcus replied. This place, it could be something different. A place where veterans help veterans regardless of color, where brotherhood means what it's supposed to mean. Buck's testimony was breaking open cases across 3 states. But more importantly, other members of the Iron Thunder MC were coming forward. Some had been waiting for a chance to leave the hatred behind, just needed a push. Detective Morgan tacked another photo on her investigation board. Next to mugshots and surveillance photos, she placed a new image. Marcus Washington standing in the rain, offering Jake Connor a chance at redemption. Maybe, she told her partner, sometimes the best way to fight hatred isn't with handcuffs. Maybe it's with hope. Sarah found Marcus in their kitchen that evening, helping Jasmine with her homework. His phone kept buzzing with messages from media, military brass, community leaders. But right now, he was just a father, teaching his daughter about right and wrong. Daddy? Jasmine asked, looking up from her social studies book. Why did those men hate you just because you're black? Marcus put down the phone, giving his daughter his full attention. Sometimes people let fear and ignorance guide them. But you know what's stronger than hate? Showing them there's a better way. In his cell, Jake made a decision. 20 years of hatred had led him here. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to remember who he'd been before. A Marine, a leader, someone who once knew what real brotherhood meant. The county courthouse buzzed with tension as Jake Connor stood before Judge Williams. 3 days had passed since the incident at the Rusty Nail, and the viral video had reached 10 million views. Marcus Washington sat in the back of the courtroom, still in his service uniform after morning duties. Your Honor, Jake's lawyer began, my client wishes to cooperate fully. The Iron Thunder Motorcycle Club has chapters in 3 states. Mr. Connor is prepared to help federal authorities dismantle the criminal networks. The prosecutor stood, holding a thick file. While we appreciate Mr. Connor's cooperation, the charges are serious. Assault, hate crimes, operating a criminal enterprise. If I may, Your Honor. A new voice spoke up. FBI Special Agent Thompson approached the bench. We believe Mr. Connor could be more valuable helping us transform these organizations than sitting in a cell. Marcus watched Jake's shoulders tense. The biker leader hadn't expected support from the FBI. In the gallery, other Iron Thunder members sat quietly, their faces showing a mix of fear and uncertainty. Mr. Connor, Judge Williams leaned forward. Why should I believe you've had a change of heart? Jake turned, looking directly at Marcus. 20 years ago, I was a Marine. Had brothers of every color. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what that meant. But 3 nights ago, a soldier I tried to hurt showed me more respect than I deserved. Made me remember who I used to be. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as Jake emerged with his lawyer. But instead of the usual aggressive stance, he walked with his head down, thinking. Marcus approached him, offering his hand. First step's always the hardest, Marcus said as they shook hands, cameras clicking frantically around them. Why? Jake asked. Why help us after what we did? Because 20 years ago, someone helped me. Could have written me off as just another angry kid from Chicago. Instead, they showed me a better path. At Fort Hamilton, Colonel Richards was meeting with community leaders. Pastor Brooks, Tommy Chen, and local business owners filled his office, discussing ways to turn this incident into lasting change. The Iron Thunder MC has influence, Richards explained. They've used it for hatred. But with the right guidance, that same influence could help veterans, support communities. Maria Gonzalez, who owned the Mexican restaurant down the street from the Rusty Nail, spoke up. Those men terrorized my business for years. How do we know this change is real? Because they're not just facing consequences, Marcus said, entering the office. They're facing their own reflection. Sometimes that's harder than any punishment. Buck's phone had captured more than just the fight. As the FBI reviewed the footage, they found evidence of hundreds of incidents across 3 states. But they also saw something else. The moment Jake Connor's hatred cracked, replaced by confusion, then shame, then possibility. In the police station, Detective Morgan showed Rodriguez a new set of photos. Iron Thunder members coming forward, offering testimony, asking about veteran support programs. Never seen anything like it, she said. It's like that one incident broke a dam. Tommy Chen was cleaning glasses at the Rusty Nail when Jake walked in, out on bail with conditions. The bar fell silent. But instead of his usual swagger, Jake approached the counter humbly. Mr. Chen, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. 20 years of making your life hell. I want to make it right. Sarah Washington was grading papers when Marcus called. Honey, you won't believe this. Jake Connor just enrolled in a veteran peer support program. Wants to help other vets deal with PTSD, anger, the things that led him down that path. Jasmine sat at their kitchen table, working on a school project about community transformation. Her teacher had assigned her father's story as an example. Dad, she asked when he got home, can people really change that much? Marcus sat down beside her. Baby, I've seen it happen in war zones. Former enemies becoming allies. Hatred turning to understanding. Sometimes people just need to be shown another way. At the FBI field office, Agent Thompson reviewed Jake's statement. The Iron Thunder leader had mapped out every hate group connection, every criminal enterprise. But more importantly, he'd identified members who might be ready to change. It's not just about arrests, Thompson told his team. It's about transformation. These organizations have structure, loyalty, resources. Imagine if they used those for good. Pastor Brooks opened his church for the first meeting of the Veteran Support Network. Former Iron Thunder members sat beside the very people they once terrorized, all wearing veteran caps from different eras. Brotherhood, Pastor Brooks began. Real brotherhood knows no color. Today we start rebuilding what hatred tore down. Earl Chen hung a new sign outside the Rusty Nail. All veterans welcome. Inside, photos of service members from all backgrounds replaced the Confederate flags. The bar that had been a symbol of division was becoming something else. Marcus stood at attention on the Fort Hamilton parade ground, watching new recruits train. One of them, a young white soldier, approached him nervously. "Sergeant," the recruit said, "my uncle was in the Iron Thunder MC. He saw that video. Turned himself in yesterday, said he wants to change, said you showed him it's possible." In her classroom, Sarah Washington listened as her students discussed the incident. These kids, growing up in a divided world, were seeing something different. Strength through restraint, change through compassion. "Mrs. Washington," one student asked, "is your husband going to teach those bikers to be different?" Sarah smiled. "He's going to show them they already know how. They just forgot for a while." Jake sat in his empty apartment, looking at old photos from his Marine days. Brothers of all colors, united in service. On his table lay paperwork for a new organization. Veterans supporting veterans. All colors, all services. 1 week after the incident, the Pentagon released their official statement. The video of Marcus Washington's response to the Iron Thunder MC would be incorporated into military training programs nationwide. Not for the combat techniques, but for the restraint, the de-escalation, the power of choosing peace over violence. "Look at this," Colonel Richards said, showing Marcus his computer screen. Social media was exploding with similar incidents. Veterans across the country were sharing stories of choosing understanding over confrontation, of helping former enemies find better paths. "It's bigger than us now," Marcus replied, watching the numbers climb. His phone buzzed. Another message from Jake Connor. "Meeting at the Rusty Nail tonight," the text read. "Bringing some old Marine buddies. Time to remember who we were before the hate." Sarah Washington stood before her class, the morning sunlight streaming through classroom windows. "Today," she announced, "we have a special guest, someone who can teach us about the real meaning of strength." Jake Connor walked in, his massive frame somehow smaller without the leather vest, without the anger. The students tensed, recognizing him from the viral video. But his eyes were different now, humble, searching. "My name is Jake," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "And I need to tell you about how I lost my way, and how one man's courage helped me find it again." At the FBI field office, Agent Thompson spread dozens of photos across his desk. Iron Thunder chapters across 3 states were dissolving, transforming. Former members were coming forward, not just with information about crimes, but with offers to help prevent others from following their path. "It's unprecedented," Thompson told his supervisor. "We expected arrests, convictions. Instead, we're seeing reformation." Tommy Chen watched from behind his bar as veterans of all backgrounds filled the Rusty Nail. Former Iron Thunder members sat beside Black veterans, Hispanic Marines, Asian soldiers. Their conversations were awkward at first, then genuine. "Remember Fallujah?" an ex-biker asked a Black veteran. "We were all the same there. Blood's the same color under fire." Marcus arrived in his dress uniform, Sarah and Jasmine beside him. The bar fell silent, then erupted in applause. But Marcus raised his hands, quieting them. "This isn't about me," he said. "This is about remembering who we all are. Warriors, protectors, brothers in arms." Buck, out on bail and wearing a tie instead of leather, approached Marcus nervously. "Sergeant, that video I took, it's helping people change. Not just here, but everywhere. People see it and realize there's another way." Pastor Brooks had opened his church basement for veteran support meetings. Tonight, Jake Connor stood before the group, his hands shaking slightly as he held a photo. "This was my brother," he said, showing them a young Marine's smile. "Lost him in Iraq. Let that loss poison me with hate. Forgot that he died serving beside men of every color. Forgot what that really means." Detective Morgan watched from her car as former Iron Thunder members helped a black-owned business set up security cameras. The same men who once terrorized these streets were now protecting them. "If you told me this would happen," Officer Rodriguez said from the passenger seat, "I'd have said you were crazy." Maria Gonzalez stood in her restaurant's doorway, watching the transformation. The bikers who had once demanded protection money now ordered lunch, tipped well, apologized for the past. "It's like a miracle," she told her daughter. "But the real miracle is someone gave them a chance to change." Earl Chen hung another photo on the Rusty Nails wall. Marcus and Jake shaking hands outside the courthouse. Beneath it, he placed a new motto: "Strength through understanding." At Fort Hamilton, Marcus led a new training session. Recruits watched the video, then learned about the aftermath, about how sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating an enemy, but transforming one into a friend. Jasmine worked on her social studies project, Community Transformation, How One Moment Can Change Everything. Her classmates gathered around, asking questions about her father, about the bikers, about change. "The hardest part," she explained, remembering her father's words, "isn't winning the fight. It's giving someone the chance to be better." Sarah found Marcus in their backyard that evening, staring at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts, soldier?" "Just thinking about ripples," he said. "How one small act of restraint can spread, touch lives we never even knew we'd reach." Jake sat in his apartment, surrounded by paperwork. The Iron Thunder MC was dissolving, but something new was rising. Veterans supporting veterans would have chapters in 3 states, using the same networks once used for hate to now spread hope. On his wall, he'd hung 2 photos. One showed him as a young Marine, surrounded by brothers of all races. The other was new. Him and Marcus at the Rusty Nail, both in military dress, showing young veterans a different way. The media called it a miracle. The FBI called it unprecedented. But Marcus Washington called it something else, a reminder that under the armor of hatred, people are waiting to remember their better selves. Tommy Chen served drinks to a mixed group of veterans, watching them share stories, bridge divides, heal old wounds. Above the bar, a new sign glowed: "All who serve are welcome." And this time, everyone knew it was true. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at Fort Hamilton. Every seat was filled with service members, police officers, and community leaders. The video played one more time, but now they weren't just watching a confrontation, they were witnessing the spark that started a movement. "Today," Marcus began, "we're launching something new. Jake Connor, would you join me up here?" Jake walked to the podium, no longer wearing leather, but a crisp button-down shirt with a Marine Corps pin. The audience murmured, recognizing him from the video. "3 weeks ago, I was an enemy of everything this uniform stands for," Jake's voice carried across the silent room. "Today, I'm announcing the formation of Veterans Breaking Barriers. We're taking the same network we used for hatred and turning it into a force for change." Colonel Richard stepped forward, holding a document. "The Pentagon has approved our pilot program. Former Iron Thunder members who qualify will work with military outreach programs, helping veterans transition to civilian life." In the audience, Buck filmed everything, not for viral views this time, but for history. His phone captured the moment Jake and Marcus unveiled the new organization's logo, a motorcycle breaking through a wall, surrounded by service emblems from all military branches. "Our first mission," Jake announced, is in our own backyard. The Rusty Nail will become our headquarters, a place where veterans of all backgrounds can find support, brotherhood, and purpose. Sarah watched from the front row, holding Jasmine's hand. Her daughter squeezed tighter when Jake spoke about his brother, about letting grief turn to hate, about finding redemption through understanding. "Mom," Jasmine whispered, "this is like those stories Dad tells about Afghanistan, about helping people change sides." Detective Morgan stood at the back, beside Agent Thompson. Their case boards were full now, not just with criminal evidence, but with transformation stories. Former Iron Thunder members turning their lives around, helping law enforcement, rebuilding communities. "You know what's remarkable?" Thompson said quietly. "We're getting calls from other motorcycle clubs. They see what's happening here. They want to change too." Tommy Chen had closed the Rusty Nail for renovation. Earl supervised as veterans of all backgrounds worked together, replacing Confederate flags with military service banners, installing computers for job searches, creating meeting spaces for support groups. "This was my father's dream," Tommy told Marcus during a break. "A place that brings people together instead of pushing them apart." Maria Gonzalez catered the event, her restaurant providing food for the same men who once threatened her. She watched Jake help her staff carry in trays, apologizing again for the past. "The food's amazing," Jake told her. "We'll make sure everyone knows this is where veterans eat free on Fridays." Pastor Brooks led a prayer before lunch, looking out at faces that once carried hate now showing hope. "The greatest battles," he said, "are fought within our own hearts. The greatest victories come when we lay down our weapons of hatred." Officer Rodriguez shared patrol reports with her precinct. Crime was down in areas where veterans breaking barriers operated. Former troublemakers were becoming community guardians. "It's like they remembered who they were supposed to be," she told her partner. "Warriors protecting people, not terrorizing them." Buck approached Marcus after the ceremony, holding his phone. "Sergeant, remember that video I took? It's being used in police training now, teaching officers about de-escalation, about seeing the person behind the anger." In the parking lot, motorcycles gleamed in the sunlight, not as symbols of intimidation anymore, but as vehicles for change. Veterans breaking barriers patches showed a new kind of pride. "We're escorting our first military funeral next week," Jake told Marcus. "African-American sergeant, served in Iraq. His family was worried about security. We'll make sure he's honored properly." Sarah graded papers that evening, smiling at her students' essays about transformation. They wrote about Marcus and Jake, about enemies becoming allies, about the courage to change and the strength to forgive. "Your father," she told Jasmine, "is showing people that the hardest person to defeat is sometimes yourself." Colonel Richards received reports from other bases. The ripple effect was spreading. Veteran organizations across the country were reaching out to local motorcycle clubs, offering paths to redemption, ways to serve again. Marcus stood in the Rusty Nail's parking lot, watching former Iron Thunder members teach younger veterans about motorcycle maintenance. Their leather vests now carried messages of unity instead of division. "You know what's funny?" Jake said, joining him. "We thought we were so strong before, but real strength is admitting when you're wrong and working to make it right." Earl hung the last photo on the wall, the moment from the courthouse steps when Marcus and Jake shook hands. Below it, he placed a plaque, "Where change begins." Tommy Chen served coffee to veterans swapping stories about service, about transformation, about finding their way back to brotherhood. The bar that once stood for hatred was becoming a beacon of hope. "Sometimes," Marcus told a young recruit watching the changes unfold, "the greatest victory isn't in winning the fight. It's in helping your opponent find a better way to be strong." The morning sun cast long shadows across the Veterans Memorial Cemetery as dozens of motorcycles rumbled through the gates. Jake Connor led the procession, his bike's new Veterans Breaking Barriers emblem catching the light. Behind him, former Iron Thunder members rode alongside Black, Hispanic, and Asian veterans. "First official mission," Jake spoke into his helmet radio. "Let's show them what real respect looks like." They were escorting the funeral procession of Sergeant James Wilson, an African-American Iraq War veteran. His family watched in amazement as the diverse group of bikers formed an honor guard, standing at attention in perfect military bearing. Marcus arrived in his dress uniform, representing Fort Hamilton. He stood beside Jake as the honor guard prepared to fold the flag. 1 year ago, these men would have been enemies. Today, they were united in service. The family was nervous when they heard bikers were coming. The funeral director whispered to Marcus, "Now look at them." Sarah brought her entire class to witness the ceremony. Her students watched in silence as former Iron Thunder members, now wearing Veterans Breaking Barriers patches, performed their duties with solemn dignity. "This," she told her students, "is what transformation looks like." At the Rusty Nail, Tommy Chen hosted the post-funeral gathering. Veterans of all backgrounds shared stories about Sergeant Wilson, about service, about the bridges being built between once divided communities. "Remember what you said that night?" Jake asked Marcus over coffee. "About having 40 ways to handle a situation? Turns out the best way wasn't even on that list." Detective Morgan walked in, carrying files. The FBI's latest report showed a dramatic decrease in hate group activity across 3 states. Former Iron Thunder chapters were transforming, following Jake's lead. "Your story's spreading," she told them. "Other clubs are reaching out. They want to know how to make the change." Buck, now the organization's media coordinator, showed them his laptop. Their website was flooded with messages from veterans nationwide. Some wanted help leaving hate groups. Others offered support, resources, mentorship. "We're going to need a bigger bar," Tommy Chen joked, but his eyes were serious. Earl was already drawing up expansion plans. The Rusty Nail would become more than a bar, a community center, a support hub, a place where transformation happened daily. Maria Gonzalez arrived with trays of food, her restaurant now the official caterer for Veterans Breaking Barriers events. Her daughter Isabella, once terrified of the bikers, now helped serve them. "Mija," Maria said, watching Jake help carry trays. "Sometimes people just need a chance to remember their humanity." Pastor Brooks led a prayer before the meal, looking out at faces that once carried hate, now showing purpose. "The greatest victory," he said, "isn't in defeating our enemies, but in helping them become friends." Colonel Richards called Marcus aside, showing him reports from other bases. The program was expanding. Veterans Breaking Barriers chapters were opening near military installations across the country. "Pentagon wants to make this official," Richards said. "Full support, resources, recognition. You and Jake have started something extraordinary." Officer Rodriguez parked her patrol car outside, watching the gathering through the window. A year of monitoring the Rusty Nail for trouble had become a year of witnessing miracles. "Remember when we used to get called here every weekend?" her partner asked. "Now it's the safest spot in town." Jasmine worked on her school newspaper article. From hatred to hope, a community transformed. She interviewed veterans, former bikers, business owners. Everyone had a story about change. "Dad," she asked Marcus that evening, "did you know this would happen when you walked into that bar?" Marcus smiled, remembering the tension of that night. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices. Jake stood in front of his bathroom mirror, looking at his reflection. The angry man who'd led Iron Thunder was gone. In his place was someone he hadn't seen in years, a Marine who remembered his oath. Buck edited footage for their training program. The video that once captured violence now taught hope. Police academies, military bases, and community organizations requested copies. "Show them the whole story," Marcus had said. "Not just the confrontation, but the transformation." Sarah found Marcus in their backyard, practicing his speech for tomorrow's veteran outreach program. "You're changing lives," she said softly. "We all are," he replied. "Every person who chooses understanding over hatred, every veteran who remembers their true mission." Tommy Chen served the last customers of the night, watching Jake and Marcus plan the next day's activities. Above the bar, the new sign glowed, "Where Warriors Remember Brotherhood." My father would be proud, he told Earl. This is what America's supposed to be. The motorcycles rumbled to life in the parking lot, heading home after another day of building bridges. Their new patches caught the streetlights, no longer symbols of division, but badges of transformation. 1 month after the funeral escort, Marcus stood before the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. The hearing room was packed as he testified about Veterans Breaking Barriers' success. Senators, he began, what started as a confrontation in a local bar has become a national movement. Former hate group members are becoming community leaders. They're helping us reach veterans who've lost their way. Jake sat in the gallery, alongside Buck and other transformed members. His testimony would come next. The man who once led violent rallies was now speaking about redemption. Tell us, Sergeant Washington, Senator Mitchell leaned forward. How do you respond to critics who say these men don't deserve a second chance? With respect, Senator, I served with men and women who died protecting second chances. The question isn't whether they deserve it, but what they do with it. Back at the Rusty Nail, Tommy Chen hosted a live stream of the hearing. The bar was full of veterans, community members, and former Iron Thunder members from 3 states. They watched as Jake approached the podium. My name is Jake Connor, his voice steady. For 20 years, I led an organization built on hatred. Today, I lead one built on hope. The difference? One man chose to see me as I could be, not as I was. Sarah's students watched the hearing in class, taking notes for their social studies project. When Jake described his transformation, hands shot up with questions. Mrs. Washington, one student asked, how do you know when someone really wants to change? You don't, she answered. You just have to be brave enough to give them the chance. Detective Morgan presented the latest statistics to her department. Hate crimes had dropped 60% in areas where Veterans Breaking Barriers operated. Former enemies were becoming partners in community safety. It's not just about stopping crime, she explained. It's about preventing it at the source. These men aren't just leaving hate behind, they're actively fighting against it. Buck worked on their new website, updating the success stories. Veterans Breaking Barriers now had chapters in 15 states. Their waiting list for membership grew daily. Check this out, he called to Marcus. Remember that biker gang in Texas that used to terrorize border towns? They just reached out. Want to know how to make the change. Pastor Brooks hosted an interfaith service celebrating the transformation. Jews, Muslims, Christians, and others gathered to witness former Iron Thunder members apologize for past wrongs. The road to redemption, the pastor said, is paved with honest words and changed hearts. Maria Gonzalez catered the event, her restaurant now thriving. The same men who once demanded protection money now protected her business, recommended her food, became part of her extended family. Mi hijo, she told her son, your father would be proud to see this. This is the America he believed in. Colonel Richards shared the Pentagon's latest directive. Veterans Breaking Barriers would receive official recognition. Their model would be implemented at bases nationwide. You've created something revolutionary, he told Marcus, a way to fight hatred without weapons. Officer Rodriguez patrolled past the Rusty Nail, remembering the night everything changed. Now, instead of breaking up fights, she watched former enemies build community together. Sometimes, she told her rookie partner, the best policing happens when people police their own hearts. Earl worked on expansion plans. The Rusty Nail was becoming a template for other venues, places where veterans could find purpose, community, and redemption. Dad, he told Tommy, remember when you almost sold this place? Now it's changing the country. Jasmine interviewed Jake for her school paper. What's the hardest part about changing? She asked. Facing yourself, he answered honestly. Admitting you were wrong. But your father showed me something. Real strength isn't in never falling. It's in getting back up. Sarah found Marcus watching the sunset from their porch. The Senate hearing had gone well, but something deeper was on his mind. Thinking about that night? She asked. Thinking about ripples, he replied. How one moment of choice can spread so far. Tommy Chen closed the bar late that night, After the hearing celebration, Jake stayed to help clean up, just like he did most nights now. "You know what I learned from Marcus?" Jake said, wiping down tables. "Leadership isn't about making people fear you. It's about helping them become better." Buck finished editing another training video. This one showed their latest project, former hate group members mentoring at-risk youth, showing them a different path. "We're not just changing ourselves," he told Marcus. "We're stopping the cycle before it starts." The motorcycles in the Rusty Nails parking lot gleamed under the streetlights. Their new emblems, a phoenix rising from broken chains, symbolized transformation. "Tomorrow," Jake told his riders, "we escort another funeral. Remember, we're not just honoring the dead, we're showing the living there's a better way." Marcus reviewed applications for new chapters. Veterans from every background wanted to join, wanted to be part of this change. "The hardest battle," he told them, "isn't against others. It's against the hatred in our own hearts." CNN cameras rolled as Veterans Breaking Barriers launched their national initiative. Marcus and Jake stood side by side at the Lincoln Memorial, surrounded by hundreds of transformed bikers and veterans. "6 months ago," Marcus addressed the crowd, "a confrontation in a small-town bar could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it sparked a movement that's changing lives across America." Jake stepped forward, his voice carrying across the National Mall. "We were lost in hatred. Now we're finding our way back through service. Today we're announcing Operation New Dawn, reaching out to every veteran-led motorcycle club in the country." The crowd included former members of hate groups from 30 states, each wearing the new Veterans Breaking Barriers patch. Their bikes lined the reflecting pool, a powerful symbol of transformation. "This isn't just about bikers," Buck explained to reporters. "It's about showing anyone trapped in hatred that there's a way out." Sarah watched the coverage from her classroom, her students transfixed. The camera panned across faces that once spread fear, now showing purpose and hope. "Your father," she told Jasmine during lunch break, "he didn't just stop a fight that night. He started a revolution of the heart." At the Rusty Nail, Tommy Chen hosted a viewing party. The bar was packed with local veterans, community leaders, and families who'd been touched by the movement. Maria Gonzalez wiped tears as she watched Jake announce their community protection program. "Last year, my restaurant needed protection from them. Now they protect us from the very hatred they once spread." Detective Morgan shared intelligence reports with FBI agent Thompson. Former hate group members weren't just leaving their old lives. They were actively helping law enforcement prevent hate crimes. "It's unprecedented," Thompson said. "They know the signs, the recruitment tactics. They're stopping it before it starts." Pastor Brooks led a prayer circle outside his church. Former Iron Thunder members stood beside the very people they once terrorized, heads bowed in shared purpose. "The greatest miracle," the pastor said, "isn't that they changed. It's that they're helping others change too." Colonel Richards watched from the Pentagon as military bases across the country adopted the Veterans Breaking Barriers model. "You've created something extraordinary," he told Marcus, "a way to fight hatred with hope." Officer Rodriguez patrolled past groups of bikers helping clean up local parks. Their vests, once symbols of fear, now bore messages of unity and service. "Remember when we used to get called every time they showed up?" she asked her partner. "Now we call them for help." Earl worked late into the night, coordinating with other bars and restaurants nationwide. The Rusty Nails transformation was becoming a template for change. "Each location becomes a hub," he explained to Tommy. "Not just a bar, a place where hatred turns to hope." Jasmine worked on her documentary project, interviewing transformed members about their journey. "What made you want to change?" she asked a former neo-Nazi-turned-community mentor. "Your father showed us something we'd forgotten," he replied. "That true strength isn't in making people fear you, it's in helping them heal." Buck managed their social media campaign, sharing stories of transformation that reached millions. "Every post," he told Marcus, "shows someone else it's possible to change." Sarah found Marcus in his study, reviewing applications from more motorcycle clubs seeking guidance. "They're not just coming for help," he said. "They're coming to help others." Jake led a training session for new members, teaching de-escalation techniques he'd learned from Marcus. The hardest fight, he told them, is with the hatred inside yourself. Tommy Chen served coffee to a group of veterans planning their next community project. The wall behind him, once covered in symbols of division, now displayed photos of transformation. My father believed in second chances, he told them. He would have loved seeing this. Maria's restaurant hosted a dinner for families affected by hate crimes. Former perpetrators served meals, shared stories, asked forgiveness. This is how healing happens, she told her daughter. One meal, one conversation, one changed heart at a time. Officer Rodriguez watched as Veterans Breaking Barriers members mentored at-risk youth, showing them alternatives to hatred and violence. You know what's amazing? She told Detective Morgan. These kids listen to them because they've been there. They know the way out. Pastor Brooks opened his church for another veteran support meeting. The pews filled with people from all backgrounds, united in their commitment to change. The greatest battles, he reminded them, aren't won with fists or weapons. They're won with courage, compassion, and the strength to choose a better way. 8 months after that fateful night at the Rusty Nail, Marcus received a call that would bring everything full circle. A white supremacist motorcycle club was planning a rally in downtown Atlanta, right where his story with Jake began. They're trying to prove we've gone soft, Jake said during their emergency meeting. Want to show that our transformation is a betrayal. Marcus looked around the room at his unlikely brotherhood, former Iron Thunder members now working alongside the very people they once hated. Then let's show them what real strength looks like. The day of the rally dawned hot and tense. The hate group arrived to find Veterans Breaking Barriers members already there, not to fight, but to demonstrate a different path. I was you, Jake told their leader, standing tall in his new vest. Angry, lost, using hatred to feel strong. Let me show you another way. Sarah brought her students to watch from a safe distance as history repeated itself with a different ending. Instead of violence, they witnessed dialogue. Instead of hate, they saw hope. Your father, she whispered to Jasmine, is showing them the same thing he showed Jake, that true power lies in transformation. Buck filmed everything, capturing moments that would become part of their training program. The hate group members watched in confusion as their former brothers greeted them with calm resolve. You think we're weak now? Jake addressed them. It takes more strength to help someone up than to knock them down. Tommy Chen opened the Rusty Nail early that day, providing a neutral ground for conversations that needed to happen. Former enemies sat across tables, sharing stories of how hatred had poisoned their lives. I lost 20 years to hate, one biker told the group. Don't waste another day of your life on it. Detective Morgan stood by with Officer Rodriguez, ready for trouble, but witnessing transformation instead. 3 members of the hate group turned in their patches that day. Just like dominoes, Rodriguez observed. One person changes, shows others it's possible. Maria Gonzalez brought food, turning a potential battlefield into a place of communion. Her restaurant had become a symbol of the change, from being victims of hate to agents of transformation. Remember when they used to threaten us? She asked her daughter. Now they protect our American dream. Pastor Brooks arrived with members of his congregation, not to protest but to support. They formed a circle around the conversations, praying silently for more hearts to change. The greatest sermon, he said, is a life transformed. Colonel Richards received updates throughout the day. The Pentagon watched closely, seeing their new approach to combating extremism in action. This is how you fight an ideology, he told his superiors. Not with force, but with hope. Earl worked the bar, serving coffee and understanding to men struggling with their own demons. The Rusty Nail had become more than a bar. It was a lighthouse for lost souls. Every person who walks through that door, he told his father, is carrying a burden. Sometimes that burden is hate. Jasmine captured everything for her documentary, now titled The Strength to Change. Her young eyes saw what many adults missed. The trembling hands, the uncertain glances, the moment hatred began to crack. Marcus stood quietly as Jake shared his story again and again. Each time it hit home with someone new. Each time another chain of hatred began to break. "I was the biggest hater of them all," Jake said. "Now I'm free. You can be too." Sarah watched her husband work his quiet magic, the same patience and strength that had transformed Jake now reaching others. "Sometimes," she told a reporter, "the bravest thing isn't standing up to hatred. It's showing hatred a better way." By sunset, 5 more members had turned in their patches. Veterans Breaking Barriers had gained new recruits not through force or fear, but through example. "This is what we trained for in Special Forces," Marcus told his team. "Not just to fight enemies, but to turn them into allies." Tommy Chen served late into the night as conversations continued. The bar that once divided people now united them, one changed heart at a time. "My father would say," he told Marcus, "that some battles are won with love instead of hate." Buck edited his footage, capturing the moment a hardened hate group leader broke down in tears, realizing how much life he'd wasted on anger. "That's the real virus," Jake told the camera. "Hate infects you, makes you think it's making you strong, but it's killing you inside." The motorcycles rumbled off into the night, but this time they carried different messages. Where once they spread fear, now they offered hope. "Tomorrow," Marcus told his team, "we do it again. Every person who changes is another victory for humanity." 9 months into their journey, the White House called. Veterans Breaking Barriers had been selected for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Marcus and Jake would receive it together, a symbol of how far they'd come from that night at the Rusty Nail. "Never thought I'd see the day," Jake said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. A former hate group leader standing in the Oval Office, getting a medal for fighting hatred. Marcus watched his old enemy, now his brother, prepare for the ceremony. Sometimes the longest journey starts with a single moment of truth. The ceremony was broadcast nationwide. Former Iron Thunder members sat alongside civil rights leaders, watching their transformation become part of American history. "These men," the president declared, "have shown us that the greatest battle isn't against each other. It's against the hatred in our own hearts." Back at the Rusty Nail, Tommy Chen hosted a viewing party. The bar was packed with veterans, former hate group members, and families touched by their mission. Maria Gonzalez brought her special celebration dishes. "A year ago," she told her customers, "I was afraid to walk past this bar. Now it's where my children feel safest." Buck live-streamed the ceremony for their social media followers. Comments poured in from around the world. Stories of transformation, questions about change, requests for help. "It's not just America anymore," he told Marcus later. "We're getting messages from former extremists in Europe, Asia, everywhere." Detective Morgan shared the latest statistics with her department. Hate crimes had dropped 80% in areas where Veterans Breaking Barriers operated. Their model was being adopted by law enforcement nationwide. "It's not just about arresting people," she explained. "It's about preventing the hate that leads to crime." Sarah watched the ceremony with her class. Her students cheered as Marcus and Jake accepted their medals, understanding they were watching more than a ceremony. They were watching hope become history. "Mrs. Washington," one student asked, "can anyone change like that?" "Yes," she answered, thinking of Jake. "If they're brave enough to try." Pastor Brooks led his congregation in prayer as they watched. "Lord," he said, "thank you for showing us that no heart is beyond redemption." Colonel Richard stood at attention in the White House audience. The Pentagon had fully embraced Veterans Breaking Barriers approach, implementing their methods across all branches of service. "This isn't just changing lives," he told reporters. "It's changing how we think about fighting extremism." Officer Rodriguez patrolled past groups of bikers helping renovate a community center. Their leather vests now bore messages of unity instead of division. "Remember when seeing bikers made people run?" she asked her partner. "Now they run toward them for help." Earl worked with contractors, expanding the Rusty Nail's capacity. What started as a bar had become a national training center for transformation. "Every booth has heard a confession," he told Tommy. "Every table has seen a miracle." Jasmine filmed it all for her documentary, capturing the quiet moments between the ceremonies. Former enemies becoming friends, hatred turning to hope, fear becoming faith in humanity. "Dad," she asked Marcus, "do you ever regret walking into that bar that night?" "Baby," he answered, "sometimes God puts you exactly where you need to be." Jake stood at the podium after receiving his medal, looking out at faces that once would have triggered his hatred. Now he saw only brothers and sisters. "Hatred is a prison," he told them, "and Marcus Washington gave me the key to escape." Tommy Chen served coffee to veterans watching the ceremony replay. The walls of the Rusty Nail, once covered in symbols of hate, now displayed their presidential medal. "My father believed in America's promise," he said. "Today, we're keeping that promise." Maria's daughter played with children of former Iron Thunder members, their laughter echoing through the restaurant that once lived in fear. "This," Maria told her staff, "this is the real American dream, not just success, but redemption." Officer Rodriguez watched as Veterans Breaking Barriers members mentored former gang members, showing them a path out of hatred. "Every person they reach," she told Detective Morgan, "is another life saved from hate." Buck updated their website with photos from the ceremony. Applications flooded in from motorcycle clubs worldwide, all asking the same question: how do we change? "The answer's always the same," Marcus told them. "It starts with one moment of truth." Sarah found Marcus in their garden that evening, still wearing his medal. "Proud of you, soldier," she said softly. "Proud of us all," he replied. "Every person who chose hope over hate." The motorcycles roared past the Rusty Nail, their new patches catching the setting sun. Where they once spread darkness, they now carried light. The morning after the White House ceremony, Jake and Marcus sat at their usual booth in the Rusty Nail, mugs of coffee growing cold as they pored over the flood of new requests for help. Motorcycle clubs from every corner of the country, and now around the world, wanted to learn how to transform hate into hope. "We're going to need a bigger team," Jake said, running a hand over his Presidential Medal of Freedom. The gold felt heavy, a tangible reminder of how far he'd come. Marcus nodded, his mind already strategizing. "We start at the source, the same tactics hate groups use to recruit and radicalize. Social media, community outreach, mentorship, we use to bring people back from the brink." They spent the morning laying out plans, a network of reformed members to share their stories online, local chapters in every city to provide resources and support, partnerships with schools and youth programs to prevent radicalization before it starts. By noon, the Rusty Nail was buzzing with activity. Veterans Breaking Barriers. Members from across the country had flown in, energized by the national recognition and eager to take their mission to the next level. They broke into teams, social media, community outreach, youth mentorship, each tasked with expanding their impact. Buck led the social media team, crafting campaigns to share stories of transformation far and wide. "Every post is a lifeline," he told his crew. "Someone out there needs to see it's possible to change." Detective Morgan and Officer Rodriguez advised the community outreach team, sharing insights on how to build trust and cooperation with local law enforcement. "You have credibility that we don't," Morgan told them. "Use it to bridge the gap." Earl and Tommy transformed the Rusty Nail into a national training hub, hosting workshops on everything from conflict resolution to trauma healing. "We're not just changing minds here," Earl said. "We're mending souls." As the day wore on and the coffee flowed, the mission took shape. A national network united in the cause of transformation, a movement to replace hatred with hope one heart at a time. Sarah and Jasmine stopped by with dinner, marveling at the bustling scene. "To think," Sarah said, "it all started with one man choosing patience over violence." Marcus squeezed her hand, remembering that fateful night. "It started with love," he said softly. "Love for a stranger who needed a chance." As the sun set over the Rusty Nail, the team gathered around the bar, raising glasses to a future they'd once thought impossible. Marcus and Jake looked out at their unlikely family, bound not by blood but by something stronger. the shared journey from darkness to light. To the power of transformation, Marcus toasted, his metal catching the fading light. May we never stop believing in its possibility. The team echoed his words, their voices rising with the determination to change the world, one lost soul at a time. In the coming years, Veterans Breaking Barriers would grow from a local curiosity to a global movement. Their model, using the bonds of brotherhood to guide people out of hatred, would be studied and replicated by organizations worldwide. But for Marcus and Jake, the greatest reward would always be the individual lives changed. The former neo-Nazi who became a beloved youth mentor, the angry young veteran who found purpose in community service, the countless souls who walked into the Rusty Nail lost and walked out found. They knew the battle against hate would never truly be over. But they also knew something else, that as long as there were people brave enough to choose love over fear, hope would always have a fighting chance. So they continued their work. One conversation, one outstretched hand, one changed heart at a time. And slowly but surely, the world began to change with them. Years later, Marcus would stand on a stage before a sea of faces, veterans, former extremists, community leaders united in the cause of transformation. He would think back to that night at the bar, when a split-second choice set off a chain reaction of hope. Hate is not an inevitability, he would say, his voice ringing with hard-earned wisdom. It is a choice, and every day, with every interaction, we have the power to choose differently, to choose understanding over assumption, compassion over condemnation, love over hate. He would look out at his audience, at the faces that had once been twisted with anger and were now alight with purpose, and feel a swell of the deepest pride. Look around you, he would say. Look at the miracles in this room. Every one of you is proof that no heart is beyond hope, no past is beyond redemption. You are the change this world needs. Never forget that. And as the crowd rose in applause, as hands of all colors joined in a standing ovation, Marcus would catch Jake's eye across the stage, seeing in him the reflection of their shared journey. They had not set out to change the world that night at the Rusty Nail. They had simply set out to see each other, really see each other, beyond the surface of skin and scars. But in that act of seeing, that choice to meet hate with humanity, they had started a ripple that would become a rising tide of transformation, carrying them all to shores they'd never imagined. The road would not be easy. The battle would not be quick. But as long as there were those willing to choose love as their weapon and hope as their shield, the march toward a world healed of hatred would never stop. And it would all trace back to a rundown bar in Georgia, where two men from opposite worlds had chosen to be brothers instead of enemies, and in doing so, had changed everything.